Hi, I'm Jared Logan. Welcome to my guest room. This is GM Toolbox from the Stream of Blood. In this series, we talk about tabletop role-playing games. Specifically, we talk about how you can take a tasty rule from one tabletop role-playing game and just sort of shove it into another tabletop role-playing game to make it even more delicious. Kind of like a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Or actually more like a Reese's Take 5, because you're going to put some pretzel in there. In this context, pretzels are story structure. Was that clear? Occasionally, I get comments from viewers about pacing of my games. In fact, some people have said, "Hey Jared, how do you set up such great cliffhangers at the end of all of your games?" Well, there is a secret to that. I cheat. Cheating and doing dirty, underhanded things is actually the subject of Fiasco, a fantastic and much celebrated game from Jason Morningstar and Bully Pulpit Games. In this GM-less game, you and your friends play small-time crooks involved in capers that go disastrously wrong, which sort of sounds like every single role-playing game party I've ever encountered.
Oh, I missed you, Jen.
It was total failure, Jen.
This game is fantastic for a number of different reasons, but one of the best reasons is that it teaches story structure. The idea is to actually tilt the story so that everything in the story is recontextualized. And if you've ever read a book on screenwriting, you know that screenwriters do this too. It's called the midpoint a lot of times in screenwriting books. And this rule of screenwriting basically states that at page 55 of a 110-page script, something new should be introduced that completely changes the story, that makes the story shoot off in a different direction. And this is often a false victory or a false defeat. For example, in The Fellowship of the Ring, the midpoint is Rivendell. The story stops being about hobbits on the run, and it starts being about the quest to destroy the One Ring. The Fellowship is formed. In The Martian, Mark Watney's doing really good, growing crops on Mars, then suddenly,
The hull has been breached and the science is leaking out!
boom, his airlock explodes, all of his crops are destroyed. A false defeat. In The Dark Knight, the midpoint in the story happens when the Joker is captured. Seems like we've defeated the villain of the story. I guess we're experiencing a false victory at that point. In Fiasco, when you get to the middle of your story, you roll on a table and you see what new elements have been introduced that completely recontextualize your story. And you choose from elements like mayhem, a dangerous animal gets loose, tragedy, death out of the blue, innocence, a neighbor wanders into the situation, guilt, someone panics, paranoia, the thing that you stole has now been stolen, or failure, something precious just caught on fire. There are a lot more elements in the tilt table in Fiasco, and here's a little secret. The tilt table in Fiasco can be used for any tabletop role-playing game. Try thinking of all of the games that you run as having two parts. If you're running a one-shot, make sure that you keep track of the time and you figure out exactly how long you're playing and when the middle point is going to arrive. For a 4-hour game, 2 hours in. If you're playing a campaign, plan all of your stories so that they are two parts. When you get to that midpoint, roll on the table, or just add something off the top of your head that completely changes the story. The more you can recontextualize things, the better. In part one, we're getting to know the characters, we're getting to know what kind of skills they have, what their goals are, how they plan to handle the tricky situation you've handed them as a game master, and whether they're succeeding or failing, it doesn't matter, because in part two, everything changes. For example, in a recent cliffhanger in our Vampires of Pittsburgh series, the character Curtis Krieger and his friends were assaulting a Camarilla Haven, a bad guy hideout. And Curtis decided to take a small group of allies and attack the front of that bad guy lair, basically drawing fire to himself, creating a distraction so that Jen Brown and Lucius Ali and their allies could sneak in the back. I was looking at the clock. I knew that we had to end the stream soon, and I knew that it was time for a tilt. Well, a very logical tilt presented itself. When Curtis Krieger attacked the front of the bad guy haven, the bad guys set off an alarm. Rather than having all the bad guys run out to attack Curtis, they instead started to run away from him. There's no reason why the bad guys can't run away. The only problem is they were running directly to where Jen and Lucius were trying to sneak in the back. The plan has flip-flopped. The people sneaking in the back are now taking on the enemies directly. And a lot of them are running back toward the back of the housing division, where you are kind of perched up on the wall looking down at all of them. And that is where we will end it today.
Oh my God.
The tilt is a story bomb. So if you're going to use it, be aware that it can create a lot of chaos. And for this reason, it's really good if the tilt is sort of foreshadowed in some way. Like, there needs to be a little bit of an idea that the tilt is coming. It's great if your tilt feels completely logical, like there was no way things were going to happen differently. It was always going to end this way. So, if you're playing Star Trek Adventures and the entire adventure has been about a diplomatic mission to Vulcan, it might not be the greatest idea to just add a tilt where the Borg attack, because where did they come from? I thought this was a mission about diplomacy on the planet Vulcan with the Vulcans, and suddenly you're adding the Borg?
This doesn't make sense.
On the other hand, though, it's better to have a great tilt and explain it later than to have no tilt at all. Because if the game just continues to be the same people going in the same directions, trying to achieve the same goals without any flip-flopping, it can get kind of dull. It's just sort of kind of like walking up a steep hill for a long time. At some point, they got to get to the top, and you, the GM, want to push them over. I've heard Raymond Chandler, the famous mystery writer who wrote novels like The Big Sleep, quoted by role players as saying, "When in doubt, have a man come through the door with a gun." What he actually said in an essay about pulp writing was, the demand was for constant action. And if you stopped to think, you were lost. When in doubt, have a man come through the door with a gun. This could get to be pretty silly, but somehow it didn't seem to matter. A writer who is afraid to overreach himself is as useless as a general who's afraid to be wrong. To me, game mastering is writing pulp stories. The demand is for constant action. You can't be afraid to overreach yourself. When in doubt, have a man come through the door with a gun in his hand and charge the players like you're a general who knows what he's doing. If you like what you saw here, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We stream 3 times a week on Twitch if you'd like to see some of these ideas and techniques in practice. And if you've used some of these techniques, or you have your own ideas about how to create great cliffhangers and act breaks, please sound off in the comments below. Until next time, happy gaming, you son of a bitch.